Good evening and welcome to the Psych Coffee Shop. I'm Aeson Knight and I'm sitting down with Penelope Hope tonight, who's got a very interesting history. She was educated in England, so I'm assuming grew up in England, lives in New York. She's a novelist, playwright, business writer, marketing executive, um, and who's performed at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, New York Arts, New York American Folk Theater. But now she has a new book out called Angel Scrolls. And it's a different take on angels from a more fantasy view and other things. So, darling, where did we stumble into this?
Well, I read about a missing Dead Sea Scroll called the Angel Scroll turning up in 1999. And after a bunch of years, they debunked it. They said they thought it was a fake. But in 1999, I was like, oh, a new angel scroll, new scroll right on the verge of the millennia where everybody was freaking out about Y2K. Remember that? And the world was going to come to an end. And then I got my own little noggin ticking, and I'm thinking, what if I used that and there was a prophecy for the 21st century? Now, what would the prophecy be about? We're all in a big mess. Everybody's big mad about everything. What if the prophecy was that there were 3 miraculous paintings that healed people and brought about miraculous, transformed people and brought about, wishful thinking, rather than a book that everybody argues about,
Right.
3 paintings, because art does tend to be a very direct text. Even if you look at a beautiful landscape, listen to beautiful music, look at beautiful art, it's very soul opening. So that's how it kicked off. That I used the scroll. I thought it was real. And then it was debunked. And then I just made up what the scroll said. And then all of the fringe legends and religious theories like Jesus in India and Glastonbury tour and the search for the Holy Grail, I just figured out how can I weave these into this story. And because I love the Da Vinci Code, so many years ago, which was this scavenger hunt, combining all these fringe theories, I thought that I thought it was a rollicking good story. So I was like, I want a plot like that where there's a scavenger hunt where they go from Jerusalem to Glastonbury Tower and Siena and Rome and all these sacred spaces and get all of the like-minded folks who are interested in this stuff like me to just take the journey with me. So that was it.
Okay. Well, what was the Angel Scroll? What was the information that they were like, no, or did they just do a carbon dating?
They actually never found the scroll. So the original Dead Sea Scrolls there were thousands of pieces. They were kind of decayed in clay jars that were found in what is now the West Bank around the Dead Sea, and they excavated them from 1947 to 1956, and then they believed that some of them were lost or stolen. And in 1999, they said, "Oh, we found one of the missing scrolls." But no one actually saw the scroll. They only saw drawings of it. And these academics it was very appetizing. It was very alluring. They were chasing it. It was in the Jerusalem Post and AP. It got a lot of press. And it was supposed to, the scroll, which they never saw in they only saw drawings, was supposed to have a lot of angelic imagery in it and gave a tour of heaven. And was quite apocalyptic. Apparently, it talked about the end of the world and suns around, appearing around Jerusalem, which one could read all kinds of is that nuclear? What is that? But it was very intriguing, and a lot of people were hot, like bloodhounds, hot in the hunt. And then because the real thing was never actually forthcoming, people were like, yeah, we're over it. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not, but we can't pin it down. But by that time, I got what I needed. I was off to the races writing this novel. So.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So what were, okay, so you brought up Jesus in India. And we have a whole religion that says Jesus was in the Americas. And they do trace him through India and, appearing up in China and then into the Americas if you read the Book of the Pearls. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, well, I think what fascinated me, Aeson, was that I found, I discovered that Moses, who's the sort of, a founder of Judaism, Mosaic law, and the early Bible, was adopted grandson of Pharaoh. If you remember back to your little Bible school, Sunday school, Moses was left in the bulrushes by his mom to save his life, and there was a pogrom of the Hebrews, and the daughter of Pharaoh rescued him and adopted him.
Mm-hmm.
He was highborn in that regard and studied the Egyptian mysteries, which were in turn influenced by Hinduism.
Right.
And so he could never become Pharaoh because he was of his adopted status. And eventually, he freed the Hebrews and took them out of slavery.
Right.
But through Moses comes this strain of this influence of Egyptian mysteries. And the Essenes, who wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls, and allegedly Jesus was an Essene. And that's very sort of controversial because they never worshipped at the temple. So that's where you get that tie to India. And there's scholars, and they put forward some proof that Jesus, because of these connections, actually did go to India to where the historical Buddha was awakened, Benares. And so it's out there, and people say, "Oh, it's not true." I'm just telling you what I researched. There are the books, there's the videos. You can go.
See, I find it interesting, and this is why I jumped onto this. Is that there is that late history? I mean, we drop off if we look at the edited version of the popular King James version. He drops off at like age 12. We know nothing of him until he's 31.
Yeah, 30. Those are the hidden years, right? The secret years.
Yeah.
So what was he doing? Where did he go?
Yeah. Was he making cabinets for a living and just, making clay birds for fun? But there's other books. The Aeson believes it's not Essenes, it's another ones that actually do like faith healing and had prophecy and all that. They also believe that he went and studied with other masters.
Yeah.
And then of course we have the modern Latter-day Saints that believes he came all the way over to the Americas and built a whole religion over here, according to from the gold tablets type thing. Why do you think people are so hesitant to believe these stories that are in other books other than the ones that were chosen to be part of the popular text?
Well, I mean, just to make the point that in Buddhism, they talk about projected avatars, right? So you've got an ascended master who can project into different avatars. So that's kind of a very compelling idea that an avatar like Jesus, an ascended master, could be projected into different times and places. Right. I mean, I think I was baptized into Catholicism when I was 13. I still have a great deal of affection for it. I love the liturgy. I love the transcendence. I love what my son calls the bells and the smells. But we do know that religion was a way to control the masses, especially when the church ruling society. And so, it's like any form of propaganda. You include what what is obedient, and you exclude. And so I think that people should look at it through that lens. And I also think that people forget, they kind of get into their little silos of religion. You forget that Jesus was in Judea, and he was, they were linked to the Egyptians, and they were linked to India. And the roots of all of these religions they're interconnected culturally, spiritually, in terms of religious study. And so, like your average American or your average European, they get their Christianity, the way it's served up to them, and then they just sort of are unaware of all this subterranean knowledge. And I just don't know, and I don't know. None of us know. I'm not omniscient, and I just believe that it's okay to be curious. I'm not saying that it's gospel. Forgive the pun. That it's gospel. I'm just saying that I've read credible sources that have versions, and I find it fascinating. I've put some of it in the book, and I hope it's interesting to other people.
I think it is very interesting. I think it's interesting that you've done your research with it. So there's even where you publish it as fiction, it's like, could this be real? Yes, it could be real. We just may not have all the pieces to the puzzle yet. And then you went into some more medieval ideas like the Holy Grail. Was there parts of that story that you decided that no, I'm not including that? Like, we're not stopping in France.
I had to. Look, I'm only one woman. I can't go on every stop of, you know.
Uh-huh.
And there's a lot of, there's a love story. The two main characters have lost the loves of their life. There's reincarnation. There's channeling. There's prophecy. There's painting. There's, the three paintings. The way that they're sacred and miraculous. They're done by three amateur unknown artists who literally channeled them. It's like you or me suddenly coming up with the Rembrandt.
Right.
So there are a lot of threads to the story, but I did work in as much of this stuff that I'm fascinated by.
Right.
How can I shoehorn this in? And yeah,
right.
I mean, the Druids, Stonehenge, the Druids were so fascinating. And when Joseph of Arimathea at Legend,
right,
that was, you remember Joseph gave Jesus his tomb after the crucifixion. He was in the scene, allegedly. I feel like I'm one of those cop shows where you have to say allegedly all the time.
We won't.
But anyway, yeah, just take it as written. And he was sent by the disciple Philip to England to evangelize the Celts. And the Celts at that time were pagans. They were polytheists. And their high priests were the Druids who did the magnificent Stonehenge. And this was a little factoid, little stocking stuffer for you. The word enchanting comes in part from the Druidic perpetual choirs. They literally 24/7 every day of the year would chant the hillside and enchant it. So literally change the energy of the landscape by chanting. So anyway, back to the story. Joseph of Arimathea comes with the chalice, the grail that Jesus used at the Last Supper, with blood drops from the crucified Christ. And he came to the Druids and he told them about Jesus, this Jesus of Nazareth. And they said, funny thing, because we worship a deity called Aeson, and he sounds like your Jesus. So we were into it. And so what they did is they gave Joseph a site on Glastonbury tour, and he built the first above ground Celtic Christian church. But they worship nature and deities and the great goddess. They love the great goddess, like they did a lot. And they couldn't quite let go of the great goddess. So you have these early Celtic churches. And then they carved the goddess because she was a symbol of fertility. She had this enormous vulva that stretched from the groin to her mouth, because it was symbolizing fertility.
Right.
So again, just when you look back into the roots of your religion, you see how it's like mashed up with earlier pagan faiths.
Yes.
Like the whole Christmas tree, the solstice, and we incorporated Christmas trees, which was a pagan festival of light. Yeah.
Well, and that's thanks to Albert.
Yeah.
Queen Victoria. Yes. He brought it from Germany because it was culturally done in Germany, brought it to England, and once they saw it, then all the English-speaking world had to have a Christmas tree.
Yeah, and that's that O Tannenbaum, that famous O Tannenbaum. And then we get Santa Claus, Saint Nicholas. I think, what was he? Was that Dutch or? But then we incorporated traditions of the German. I don't know if you've ever been to Europe, but the German Christmas markets are magnificent, something to behold.
I haven't, but but I've seen pictures and they're beautiful, and there's so much written stuff in there and so much like interlacing history. So with this, what was your writing process like? Like, did you just have like 50 notes, or did you kind of outline it all out?
No, and I don't want to be too precious about it, but I would literally, I felt like I was excavating the story, like a piece of marble, and I was just chipping away and finding it. And I would write a chapter. And my process with this was not to like rush through a first draft and get to the end and then go back. But I would literally like fine tune a chapter and then wait for the pulse to what's going to happen in the next chapter. And it's funny, I will tell you something sort of strange. My heroine is called Claire Lucas, which is clear light.
Right.
And there's a kind of a villain called Lucian Gray, which is like gray light or shadowy.
Right.
And that was honest to goodness not conscious. Like it wasn't until, in fact, all of the names in the book have got some sort of extra meaning. And and I did it. I mean, one could say that the creative unconscious is always working through you. It's your unconscious, like story. But then when I look back and I was like, oh, look at the names of these characters. They all mean something that I never realized. I didn't intend it, but there they are.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So with that and the writing process and all that, was there much editing to do?
There was some. Not of the story itself. The story, sort of the plot and the things that I wove. The editing was more just like fine sanding and making it more muscular, making the dialogue right. It was just getting the right balance and making it more elegant and tight. In fact, I had this thing where I went through the manuscript, and if I found one change, I was like OCD about it. That means that I'd have to, when I got to the end, have to go all the way back through it again. And every time I made a mistake, and my husband said, "You're out of your mind." And I was just like, no, when I don't want to leave anything on the field. Although, when I read back on the book, there are always things that you want to change. In fact, I took art classes with a really wonderful painter, and she said it's the dissatisfaction of the artist. You're never satisfied. And she told this story, I don't know if it's true, of this famous painter. One of his canvases was put in a French Parisian museum, and he broke in so that he could, and took his paints and a step ladder so he could fix it. So, that's the dissatisfaction.
Surprising.
Yeah.
Well, that happens a lot with creatives and a lot of artists, especially when they're in that second or third edit. And it's like, ooh, I don't like this scene at all. And they take that out. But that scene may have just had one line that feeds into 5 chapters later that then bounces back to the verse beginning. And it's like, okay, enough is enough. I just have to release it and let it out to the world. And that happens all the time. I mean, I think that's why I'm so slow with my writing process of taking it chapter by chapter and, trying to work out intricate details and that type of thing. And this is just me telling family stories. And it's like, one doesn't fit the other. Well, we have to go back and, which is it? Was the car blue or red? Oh, we're talking about 2 different cars. Great. Thanks for that story. Great. Now I have another chapter to insert. But anyhow. So, where did you end up at with this? With the story? Like, where did you go? Okay, enough of the back history. Enough of enough threads to the quilt.
I sort of ended it where, there were a lot of things I wanted to wrap up. The love story, the arc of Claire's story, because in every great drama, there has to be sort of a character arc and a transformation. I wanted really to, I think the thing I was getting at that was that bereavement causes existential crisis. It's one of those things where, I've said this before, you're rocking along, you do good grocery shopping, you're feeding the dog, whatever, and then you're struck by tragedy and loss, and then you wake up and you're like, who am I? Why am I here? Where the heck did I come from? Where am I going? Where's the person I love gone? That's Claire. And I think now, because we're not all pegged to traditional religion, we still have a God-sized hole in our life, especially when we're grieving or suffering or struggling, and we're reaching out to something bigger and higher and better to guide us. And I was like, the modern seeker is not, many are not tied to any particular tradition. So they go looking, like, what do you believe? I believe in the Akashic records. I believe in psychics. I'm a fundamentalist Christian or whatever. And that was a little bit like me. I started with Catholicism. I got into Buddhism. I
Mm-hmm.
I've always been curious and kept an open mind. And so that is the nature of the modern seeker. And I don't judge it. I mean, as long as it's helping
Right.
you, you're living a good life, you're
Mm-hmm.
not hurting anyone, you're trying to live constructively in a loving way. And so I wanted that to be Claire's journey. But I wanted
Right.
to make room for miracles and metaphysical and supernatural events, because
Right.
increasingly in my reading, I read a lot of
Mm-hmm.
New Age stuff. I read a lot of
Right.
Buddhism, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. I thought it was great, spiritual materialism,
Very
and
good book.
amazing. And then I got more into metaphysics, and now the new science, the new physics is sort of meeting
Mm-hmm.
spirituality and science. Consciousness is the ground of, is the
Right.
fundamental, everything arises. So I wanted that, those are just all my curiosities and interests, and I wanted to put all of those in,
Mm-hmm.
and then the message, and it's sort of, I didn't know it would be so relevant when the book came out
Right.
this year. People they're anxious and tribal and sad and angry, and our endocrine system, we're all addicted to adrenaline and
Mm-hmm.
cortisol. I think we've got to find a way to step back and find an inner light and, actively imagine a life for ourselves that's based on more spiritual principles. Otherwise, we're just going to get sucked into nihilism and defeatism and narcissism and all the other stuff that's
Right.
driving.
Especially when we no longer fit into the cookie cutters of the past.
Bingo. Yeah, people are like weaving new things together. And I know
Mm-hmm.
some people get upset about that. But, the famous Roman philosopher, poet Terence said, nothing human is alien to me. So, if it's in the
Right.
human psyche and the human is
Mm-hmm.
aspiring to it and experiencing it, I'm just more curious than judgmental about it.
Right. And, especially because when you start stepping into the metaphysical world and you start stepping into religious ideas and religious history and religious science, it gets messy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something, and we were talking about this earlier, I think that's something that's really hard for people to look at, is some of the messiness. Especially
Mm-hmm.
nowadays. I don't know how far you've branched into the world of TikTok and all that. There is so much like, you can't do that because you're not this, and oh, you can't, like, this is close. And it's like, 200 years ago, it was whatever your neighbor is doing is working, you're going to copy.
Yeah.
If they're
Yeah.
planting their corn in diagonal fashion, like a zigzag pattern, you're going to copy that if it's getting them more corn than you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So, where do you think spirituality is in the modern viewpoint? When we're no longer controlled by it,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's no longer a government body, as it was for centuries, and still in places of this world it is. Where does it fit in?
But I think it was Voltaire who said if God didn't exist, we'd have to invent him.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about the human psyche that cries out for a creator and beyond like childlike,
Mm-hmm.
magical. There is definitely, when you pursue a higher good. I listen to atheists like Richard Dawkins, who's a brilliant evolutionary biologist. And he
Mm-hmm.
just is like superstitious nonsense. And I'm like, if you don't understand
Mm-hmm.
what spiritual belief can do to your life in terms of the way you think about yourself and the world and what you think is possible and how you choose to live, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what to tell you. So I think that now we're freed of I think, isn't there a root meaning of religious that literally means to
Right.
bind up? I think that now people are not like forced and compelled, um,
Right.
that they still feel that they have a thirst for it,
Mm-hmm.
and they go looking. And because of the internet and an interconnected world, they're free to explore. And Chogyam, in his book, the Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, in his book Spiritual Materialism, said, "It's not a supermarket. You're not shopping for cans of Coke. I'm
Right.
going to do crystals this week and saging next week, and then I'm going to do the Akasha." No, you've got to. The point is that you find something and you
Mm-hmm.
stick with it. It can be a very simple practice. Some people have very simple practices. You know,
Right.
very simple meditation practices, but it gets the job done for them because they stick to it.
Right.
So I think that people are, it can be confusing because there are so many diverse and different theories.
Right.
But I think what we're finding is that a lot of the young guys, you remember young guys got into the new atheists, Christopher Hitchens
Right.
and Darwinism. Interestingly, a lot of them are finding it doesn't work for them. They're kind of depressed, and so now they're looking for. There's a return to traditional religion, but then there's a seeking new unitary church, but people are,
Right.
I think, genuinely questing for spirituality rather than just like putting their ties on Sunday and going through the motions. And I think that's it. It's, to use your word, Aeson, it's very messy. But I think it's the messiness that sort of precedes order, and precedes people actually coming to find things that are uplifting and helpful, and hopefully it'll restore some sanity.
I'm hoping it restores some sanity because Lord just knows we've got everything from, okay, there are 26 or 27. There may have been a new one translated. 27 versions of the Christian Bible. We've got the Quran. We got 4 or 5 books of the Quran running around. We've got all the Buddhist writings. Like, because there are so many Buddhists that wasn't the Buddha, but so many reflections of that. Yeah. We've got all this stuff coming out of Hinduism that's finally getting translated to English. It was never translated before. And I don't know, I'm kind of sitting over here on my little witch mountain going, can y'all just get along? It is all the same stuff. You burn incense, you burn sweetgrass, you burn a mix of frankincense and myrrh. They all smell the same when we get to it. It all stimulates the corner of your brain. What's your viewpoint on that?
Well, that's why my book, with my little fantasy of how to heal the world, is 3 miraculous paintings. That's it. No books, no different versions, no reading, no interpreting. Just 3 paintings in a triptych. You look at them, and you're good to go. It's this direct inspiration, and that was something fantasy. Wouldn't be lovely if it was that simple, because there's a lot of complexity, and people are fighting over, this and that. And I said to someone earlier that I've got friends, that are saved, and they want me to be saved, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that they want me to be saved, and I don't take it as an insult. I take it as their caring.
Right.
But I don't have that kind of certainty. I can't say to you, Aeson, do this or you won't be saved. And I know that some people just feel like I would get there in the end, and that's fine. Leave. People are where they are. But no, the book is really about, in the New Testament, Jesus left us with two commandments: love God and love one another. Sounds so simple, right? And then miracles will follow. And that's really the message of the book, my novel, and the message of the paintings, reinforcing the gospel that says, love God, love one another, and miracles will follow.
Right.
And it's a very simple.
The book of 200 and some old laws was broken or null and void after that point. And I think that's the other piece people forget, is the precess to that. Because the question was, what is the 2 most important commandments? And he goes, there are only 2 commandments. Love God, not defining who God is. He just said love God, and love everyone else.
Yeah, love one another. And that's the golden rule: do unto others as you would. It's so simple and yet so impossible.
Right.
And we run around looking for all these answers, and it's like, if we all, and listen, I'm as bad as the next person for copying out on the golden rule, but really, if we just, on a worldwide tannoy, was like, today is, what day are we on, Aeson? Tuesday or Wednesday?
This is Tuesday, going into Wednesday. Sorry, I work in 3 different time zones, so it's like, what day, what time, where are we?
Well, it's like, listen up, campers. Today is Tuesday, and today we're all going to follow the golden rule. I mean, really, there would be a worldwide transformation, right?
Right. So what else are you working on? Because you're busy.
Well, I was asked to turn the book into a film script.
Okay.
And so I just finished that with a writing partner, which was fun, fun, fun. Loved it. I mean, kept me up nights, tortured me, but that's the joy of
Right.
writing. You got to wrestle it to the ground. So just
Hmm.
finished that. And I'm writing articles, to promote the book. I'd like everyone to go to penelopeholt.com and email me. I went on a coast to coast, and a guy sent me this lengthy email with so much meaty information about Jesus in India that I didn't know. And he
Uh-huh.
like gave me this lowdown. And I love that,
Cool.
when people send me, their interests are kind of add
Hmm.
to,
Add
some
to the
understanding.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd
So,
like, people have asked me if I do a sequel, and there's certainly, the Angel Scroll is very meaty. It's got a lot of stuff, and there's definitely tangents that
yeah.
I can go off. And so I'll take a breather and consider that. Oh, and I've been writing, so kind of a guilty pleasure. I haven't told anybody this, but I tried my hand at romance, because it's just,
Oh,
it's
right.
just such a big market for it, and the tropes are so, you write along
They're
tropes
so
like.
simple.
And I was like, yeah, this is like mental bubble gum after all of that deep dive
Right.
into the meaning of the universe. So I actually have a romance novel called Polly Wants a Lover,
Uh-huh.
coming out with Inkspell Authors. Um,
Cool.
I've used a pseudonym, Bella Sayer, because it's so different from the stuff I usually write. It's like I got, like Beyonce has
Mhm.
a Sasha Fierce alter ego.
Right.
Um, Bella Sayer is my romance pen name, so
Oh,
that can go off.
very cool. How hard was it for you to switch genres?
Well, not hard with the romance because they're sort of tropes. You have to,
Right.
the reader in that market expects a
Right.
certain arc, certain storyline, certain tropes.
Hmm.
So it was just fun. That was like a
Right.
crossword puzzle, and then you got to choose how steamy. If you go to
Mhm.
mild or
Right.
and because with Catholic upbringing, I'm not ready to go like super spicy hot. So mine is what you call warm. It's warm romance.
Cozy romance.
Yeah, well, not quite cozy. I mean, there's some sort of daring stuff in there, but not.
Hmm.
I
Not
I'm
the
I just
walk of
I love.
lush.
I mean, who was that famous one that did the 50 Shades of Grey?
I
Remember
don't know.
50 Shades
I'm
of
sorry,
Grey
it's
was.
not my genre.
Yeah, but I just, my hats off to people who can, you
Right.
know put
Yeah.
you're putting it there. But
Shannon in our chat here, she's full steam.
oh, she's full stick. Good on you, Shannon. Someone's got to
Yeah.
do it. Yeah,
Yeah. Stephanie Myers.
Stephanie Myers. Yeah,
Yeah.
Didn't Stephanie Myers do the wolf, werewolf, and
Uh huh.
vampire? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. She done that one also. She's done a lot of daring compilations.
Hmm.
Hmm. So
Yeah.
so that's awesome. Are you going to continue in that genre, or was this just the see the temperature?
Well, I thought maybe I'll do a series of women who want.
Uh huh.
Josie wants a baby, Polly wants a lover. I
Uh
just
huh.
thought it would kind of be fun. There've been some good series that kind of play
Right.
off those themes. So,
Right.
so yeah, I think it's good. I love to write, and that's sort of not such a heavy lift.
Right. And it's not, but the turnaround schedule for that is so insane. I
Yeah,
mean, like some of those authors are dropping a new book every month, and I'm like, there is no way you're putting 120 words, boom, 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 boom. That's insane.
yeah,
Oh, E.L. James wrote the Fifty Shades of
yeah,
Grey. She was going to
yeah.
eat Stephanie Myers. There you go. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Um, oh, okay. She made it. Okay, so yeah. Okay, now I see where the connection comes from. Apparently, E.L. James used a lot of the fan fictional things into the 50 Shades of Grey. And the editor went back and said, you can't do that. How bad was your editor on you when
Not
you
bad at all.
presented Angel Scrolls?
Not bad at all. Collective Ink published the book. They're in UK and here, and it was just more. I mean, I've been an editor myself. You know, I've written a lot of both written and
Right.
co-written, so I turned in a fairly tight manuscript, and but just house style and you know, just catching things. But you go back and you read it, and you're like, oh, we should picked a different word. But who is it? I heard some actress talking about it that. Andy Warhol said, you know, make art, put it out there. Some people will love it, some people will hate it. Just make more art.
Make
And
more art. Yeah.
I mean, you really want people to read the book and love the book, and become engrossed in it and be interested and ask questions. But once you've let it go, you know, you've got to just got to move on and go to the next thing. So I understand a lot of actors, which always surprised me, would say that they never watch their movies. Like once they've done the film, they never even look at it. They never watch it. They don't want to see themselves.
I don't think I'd want to, because I thought it's so hard, editing like these podcasts and stuff. It's like, this is, you know, because I'm listening to my voice and I hate the sound of my voice, and I think everyone does. And it's like, okay, you know, I should have asked this, or I should have asked that, or, you know, we could have went with a different direction with this. And it's like, now I just like, nope, I'm not editing it. It goes up if it goes up. If we make a mistake, we make a mistake and we move on.
Good for you. I love that. There's just something very organic and free about that. You know, obviously you don't want to be sloppy or messy or make mistakes, but when your neurosis is driving you to overly curate things, that can't be good, right?
Oh yeah, it can't. And that's why we went live. It was like, fine, if we're going to do it, they're going to get to watch it. So what would be the sequel to Angel Scrolls?
I think another adventure. To find you know, remember the Indiana Jones and the search for the lost Ark of the Covenant. Going back to the Da Vinci Code, I love where you mix those sort of ancient supernatural artifacts with modern day. I love that film. I was sort of influenced by it, especially when I was just doing the movie script now. Remember Patricia Arquette in Stigmata?
Yes.
Where she was channeling that monk with the Temple of St. Thomas. Angel Scrolls kind of got that feel to it, you know?
It does. So, it does.
Yeah, I think to come up with, obviously you don't want to become a parody of yourself and wear it out, but there's a lot more interesting. I'd love to get more into all the spiritual traditions and other, just kind of a similar thing but different. You know, Dan Brown did Angels. I think he did Angels and Demons first, and then he did the Da Vinci Code, and then people discovered Angels and Demons after the Da Vinci Code.
Because that was his. The Da Vinci Code made him. Like, don't care what he writes, he can go and write, you know, technical writing for computers. And it'll mass sell because it has his name on it, because they'll be looking for more of the Da Vinci Code and more of that flavor there. Do you know, and it's like, even if you took on like the Ark of the Covenant or Moses' Staff or Jacob's Code, those are all rich with history and fringe history to them. You know, there's thoughts that like Jacob's Code was on John the Baptist when he was crucified. You know, all these, we'll call them fables for now.
Yeah.
I mean, those things can be dug so much into.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in Catholic school, we used to go on pilgrimages to Lourdes in France, which was in the foothills of the Pyrenees.
Right.
An incredible place, you know, where Bernadette of Lourdes saw the Virgin Mary at the grotto, and then people got, I mean, right there. I mean, how many stories, what kind of a novel could you write about taking place in Lourdes with the miracles and the, you know, there's just where the real life and the supernatural or the mystical, and Catholic religion is very replete with mysticism. You know, in the book, my book, part of it takes place in Siena, which is a medieval city. It ground to a halt during it was very prosperous until the Black plague,
Right.
the Black Death, and Saint Catherine of Siena was a mystic. You know, we had these mystics like Bernadette of Lourdes, Saint Teresa of the Little Flowers,
Right.
who had these mystical visions of Jesus. Joan of Arc, you know, these very these women who had these mystical experiences. I mean, I think that is fascinating. Imagine a novel that, you know, included storylines from these saints. There's just a lot to go at, and it's just it piques my interest. I'm just particularly interested.
Very much so.
You know, we have this rich tradition of saints and the sort of mysticism, and I like that. I think ordinary people like to believe that there are these figures that had these sort of transcendent and supernatural experiences.
Do you think we're experiencing them today, and they're just not like they're just kept under wraps?
Do I think they're spirits?
Like, do you think that we have modern day saints forming, modern day mystics within the Christian religion as powerful as they were during then?
Yeah, I do. I think that I've said this before, but I believe that we experience everything from consciousness. Even a physicist or a cosmologist who's looking at the universe through a telescope, it's all arising from consciousness. And I think that some people experience on a certain band with the mundane things like the table, we all agree.
Right.
Then I think there are other people that have extrasensory perception, whatever, they're tuning in, and they're seeing other things. They're seeing angels, or they're channeling, or, you know, Seth. Right. And I know people poo-poo it because you can't empirically prove it, and they don't see it, so they think that no one else does. But I was saying to someone today that in modern psychiatry, they're not deeming schizophrenics sick per se anymore. They understand that they just have more material erupting from their unconscious. They have auditory hallucination. Right. They have visual hallucination. They're seeing a lot more. And is that real? Well, it exists in the collective unconscious. It's coming from somewhere. So, I mean, the short answer is yeah. I mean, I think people have these extrasensory, mystical, transcendent experiences, and they talk about them, and they're very real. And I'm not gonna poo-poo it. If near-death experiences,
right?
Oh my goodness! On YouTube, I've watched dozens and dozens and dozens of them, and you can look whether it happened or not. They believe it happened. It was so real to them. And
what I love is when they go and they research it, and it's like, yep, A plus B equals C. I think there's a man, he's got to be in his 40s now, because this is back in the 80s, and he was like reliving the Second World War every night in his dreams.
Yeah.
And then later on went through, and the family researched, and is like, yep, here it is.
Yeah. I just saw a 5-year-old on YouTube or Twitter, little tyke at a piano, virtuoso, like little fingers playing like a Mozart or a Rachmaninoff.
Wow.
I mean, it's not. You look at him and you go, he's 5. Like my kid couldn't even tie a shoelace when he was 5, and you're like, what is this? You know, this level of virtuosity, and you say, how the heck is this 5-year-old sounding like he's on, you know, Carnegie Hall?
Right. Why 3 paintings?
Triptych, 3. You know, 3 is a sacred number.
When I read that, was looking at you, reading through your book, and I saw 3, I was like, I wonder if she tied that to Fatima and the 3 secrets of Fatima, or 3 messages of Fatima.
Yeah, but I think there's always that through. I think those you know, I'm not expert in numeracy, but I think those numbers have the Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. 3 is and triptychs are, you know, they are like actual
all throughout
forms. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool, darling. So yes, I'm not giving you much of the book away. I want you to get her book. Where can they get that at, honey?
Well, if they go to PenelopeHolt.com, they can see the trailer and read about the book and my other books and sign up for my blog, send me a message or whatever. And book clubs, if you would like me to come to your book club and talk about the book, it's always fun for people who've read it and they've got their own take. I love hearing what people take from it. If you go to penelopeholt.com and you can link to the book and buy the book, you can buy it anywhere, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, the usual places, but you can link to the to the book from my website, penelopeholt.com.
Very cool. Very cool, darling. All right, my dear. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll be right back in a few minutes, guys.
Love diving into metaphysical topics, psychic insights, and lively discussions? Now you can help keep the conversation going. By becoming a Patreon supporter of The Psychic Coffee Shop, you'll gain access to exclusive content, behind-the-scenes insights, and special perks just for our patrons. Join our community and ensure that your favorite psychic show continues to thrive. Your support helps us bring more enlightening episodes, special guests, and deep dives into the world of the unseen. Become a patron today and enjoy a cup of wisdom with us every week. Click the link to join the baristas and unlock exclusive content. Thank you for your support.
Unlock your full potential with Aeson Knight's life coaching. Are you ready to take control of your life and manifest the future you deserve? Aeson Knight, a seasoned life coach and master psychic, is here to guide you on a transformative journey. Whether you're navigating personal challenges, career transitions, or seeking spiritual growth, Aeson's life coaching services offer tailored guidance to help you achieve your goals. With Aeson by your side, you'll discover the tools to overcome obstacles, embrace your true self, and create a life filled with purpose and fulfillment. His unique blend of spiritual insight and practical coaching empowers you to turn your dreams into reality. Ready to make a change? Book your session today and start your journey to a more empowered, balanced, and joyful life with Aeson Knight. Click the link to schedule your first session and step into your power.
Are you ready for an electrifying podcast experience that keeps you coming back for more? Join Aeson Knight every week as he takes you on a journey through captivating shows, each exploring unique and fascinating topics. And here's the best part. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode where you can get your burning questions answered live on air, absolutely free. Whether it's relationship advice, career guidance, or mystical insights, Aeson's podcasts have got you covered. When you subscribe, you become part of a vibrant community, engaging directly with Aeson as he shares his wisdom and leaves you feeling empowered and enlightened. Don't miss out. Subscribe now and be part of the conversation. What you'll get by subscribing: Monday 5 p.m. Metaphysics. Today, soulful conversations with Aeson Knight and Firefly, exploring the essence of metaphysics in today's world. Tuesday 8 p.m. The Psychic Coffee Shop. Dive into current events with a psychic twist, featuring special guests and thought-provoking discussions. Friday 9 p.m. The Mountain Bears Podcast. Lively discussions from a gayish, techie-ish, bearish perspective with Aeson and Joe. Sunday 5 p.m., Psychic That Plans. Get a weekly tarot energy overview and time management tips from Aeson Knight. Click here to subscribe now and never miss an episode. By subscribing, you're not just tuning in, you're joining a community of curious minds and ensuring you're always in the loop with Aeson's insightful and interactive shows. Don't wait. Hit that subscribe button and get ready for an amazing podcast journey.
Ready for an enchanting journey of self-discovery? Join Lord Aeson Knight in our Wicca courses. Unveil the secrets of Wicca. Explore deity relationships, rituals, and more. As a third-degree high priest, Aeson Knight guides you toward empowerment and enlightenment. Enroll today and take your first step into the magical circle. Click the link to begin your journey.
Psychic Saturday. Get 50% off with Aeson Knight every third Saturday of the month. Don't miss out. Book now.
Good evening, honey. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you this evening?
Good, darling. All right. I had a great conversation with Penelope about her book, Angel Scrolls. Go get it, guys. I liked it. Granted, I read it in a night. It was a slow work night. What can I say? But it's it's thin, it's an easy read, very comfortable to get through, and very enlightening. I hope she comes out with book 2 and 3. I hope she maybe takes on like Chasing the Ark, or the Ark being found with hard drives in it instead of scrolls, and tripping around that idea. or Moses' staff being found in the White House, that Abraham Lincoln used that as a cane, and like these are the levels I think she could go with these books. So I know we normally cover very serious, hard, fact, metaphysical fact books. This one's got a lot of threads in it that are fact. So it's when she said, "Oh, and this is fiction," I'm like, yeah, and so was High Magic's Aid when it was published. Let's wait, 20 years and see where it comes out at.
There you go.
All right. So I want to start a new. We've done shows on this before, but I want to start using a different thread. I want to go and pop onto the thread for psychic and take a Reddit each week for that, and then we'll do I'm an asshole, and then we'll do relationship advice. And this is if I can find one that I'm actually interested in answering.
Oh, there you go. All right, so we're starting with our psychic.
Yep.
All right, abilities have stopped. From a young girl, I've always had strong abilities, whether it was speaking to spirits, dreaming things that were soon to happen, or hearing a guiding voice. I knew from an early age I was different. My mom and sister also possessed these gifts. My mom's focused more on dreaming of things to be, while my sisters were centered around intuition. We've all experienced encounters with spirits, etc., at some point in our lives. When I was younger, I didn't think much of my gifts, but as I got older, things changed. Around 14, I got in a relationship with a very bad man and was with him for 5 years. During that time, I had dreams of things that would happen before they happened, saw his deceased grandfather in my dreams, spoke to him, and experienced evil. Before I left him, I went to a psychic to gain some insight and was told he had a dark spirit, etc. I left him at 19. Slowly from 19 to 21, I realized I stopped having these dreams. Of course, I still dream, but I can tell when my dreams are just dreams or something more, and I haven't had one since I was 21 and dreamt of my sister-in-law going into labor, then waking up to a call of her being in labor. I miss my gifts and wish I could have them back. I was blessed with intense tuition and a pathway to see into what may be. However, it's gone away, and I don't know what I did wrong. I am religious and pray regularly, not as much as I used to, but I still do. Has something like this happened to anyone else before? My mother and sister never lost their abilities to my knowledge. I'm not sure what's happened with me.
I'll tell you what's happened with you. You're drained. You aren't taking care of yourself. You aren't maintaining probably a high vibrational diet. And most likely, your dreams are still happening. It's just there's nothing shaking your world. Okay, it's kind of like if you're not a runner. Example, Joe and me are not runners. But I promise you, if a bear comes after us both, we're both going to run.
I'm still not a runner, but I'm more likely to commit an act that will mean that I run faster than he does.
Yes.
Just saying.
Just saying. But no, like if you are used to having psychic vision, psychic view, psychic instinct, and all of a sudden they stop, it's because your body isn't got the power to produce it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Like, so nurture yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And this will pass.
Right. And dream journal. Right? Yeah.
Oh, exactly. Brenda's right there with me. Oh, one only has to outrun the other.
Or outsmart the bear.
Go for the kneecaps.
Go for the back of the neck.
Just saying.
Just saying. Anyhow. But no, what's your thoughts on this?
No, I think with stopping abilities that probably has more to do with you're not nurturing yourself to be supportive of that. Moreover, it may just be, a phase of your life that this isn't something I don't want to say unimportant, but it's like you have the ability. It's unlikely you've lost the ability as
Right.
much as you're not accessing the ability properly. You're not doing the self-care. You're not, training it. You're not. And so you're not going to get random vividness, except in dire instances. Like emergencies, things that are very important. I would also go so far as to, have you had a health checkup recently? Like, not only is there like the whole like spiritual self-care, but literal physical self-care.
Right.
Literal physical self-care. This is a draining body experience. So I would also question, what is your physical health?
All right.
It sounds like some of the things that you've had happen were during high hormonal periods of your life, and may have benefited from like some out of control hormones that we have with youth. But as we age, and not calling anyone 21 old, but as we age, we kind of age out of the heavy hormone phase. So if you are physically neglectful of your body in general, i.e., you're doing heavy duty dieting, you're malnourished, you're not properly nourishing your body, you might also find yourself hormonally lacking. As in, you barely have the energy to function as human. You're not going to be manufacturing your hormones properly. You're not going to be functionally your best. So, take some time.
The other part of this, right? And the other part of this is, I'm thinking 21-year-old comparative to, like, let's say 15, or even 18, still living at home. You're getting more sleep normally than when you're 21, living at college.
There is that.
Yeah. Because, like, Aeson has to have his minimal sleep, and he will take it anywhere he can get it, including the car. I sleep best in the car, but that's just me.
I don't know. I had the car nap today. That was not a benefit to my life. It was, my neck and I have had a moment today. But no, there's a lot of things that, may be weighing into this. Especially 21 is usually a high stress life moment. And it is easy to throw things like eating and self-care and all the things out the window as you're just kind of surviving.
Right.
You can't build anything from an empty plate.
Right.
So,
and you can't, if you ain't filling up your own pitcher, and you ain't doing, and I preach this that all of my new psychics that come on board, all people studying, we go through this in every class. If you're going to read, you have to be well nutritioned. That doesn't mean eat more than you should, just eating high vibration, non-processed foods. You have to be maintaining your energy. You have to be maintaining your focus, because even when lucid dreaming is occurring, that lucid dreaming uses the same chemicals as reading a deck of tarot.
Yeah, and I would say it would also be very, like, intense. Like it's
Right.
like reading a tarot, like reading, from a tarot deck is one thing. That's there's a spiritual component, and then it's actually sight reading the cards in relation to the situation. But then to actually form a full lucid dream, probably a little more energy expounded. Like you're not working with a deck to communicate imagery to you. You're having to whole cloth invent it.
Right.
Your brain has to
Create.
fully form the idea.
Right.
So I doubt you've lost your ability. I doubt it's not that it's not occurring.
Right.
I'd say it is, but it's so minimal.
Right.
It's so slight.
Right.
That it's not giving you the same experience.
Right.
And so again, it doesn't have that intensity. And I'd start looking around your life for
what's draining you. And I'm not talking on the spiritual level of, oh, you've got a dark. Fuck that. This is biochemistry. We now have neurologists that are studying it.
Yeah. This is not like. Again, investigate your health just in case. Like always make sure you're in good.
Right.
Yeah. Like that's always an A1. After that, look around your life. What are you doing?
Right.
And is this a conducive environment to be spiritually led? Or is this an environment conducive to being spiritually left the fuck alone? Because you might find you're being left the fuck alone.
Right.
Like, that one has too much going on. Like, there's no time for this. Like,
right.
Is it an emergency? No. All right, then leave her alone. So those would be my takes on it.
Right. All right. So over to I'm out an asshole, and just in clarification, I chose this one.
He did. Am I the asshole for blaming my wife after I got fired? My wife, 36 female, and I, 37 male, have been married for 5 years and have a 4-year-old son. My wife is a pediatrician and I work in marketing. Our son is in daycare during the day and recently moved
up to preschool. Recently moved up to the new preschool room. A few weeks in the new room was fine.
Okay. The first few weeks in the new room were fine, but then he became friends with a couple of older boys in the class and began to have some behavioral issues. The 3 boys seem to feed off of each other's energy and can get really rambunctious and play too rough. Games of tag will regress into pushing, shoving, and hitting. Nap time comes with them tossing pillows at each other and being disruptive. Disagreements turn into hitting and throwing. We've had meetings with his teachers and the director and changed the way we do a few things at home. We've tried different types of goal setting, positive reinforcement, multiple conversations, taking away of privileges, etc. But his behavior continues to be disruptive at best and dangerous at worst. We're exhausted. Next step is getting him in touch with a behavioral therapist. Thankfully, my wife knows a few of them and they can expedite the scheduling process. It's gotten to a point where we have had to pick him up from daycare in the middle of the day multiple times. The daycare has both of our cell and work contact numbers, but they only seem to ever be able to get a hold of me. I've had to leave work probably 7 to 8 times in the past 2 months to get him. Every time daycare calls me, they say they've tried my wife, but she didn't answer. I will then call and text my wife to see if she can get him, but her responses are always delayed to the point that daycare has had to call me back before to remind me that our son needs to be picked up. I understand she has patients to attend to, but she also has a family. After the last 2 times I had to pick up our son, my boss told me that I can't keep doing this. Then it happened again. I tried getting a hold of my wife, but she didn't answer or return texts. I told my boss I had to go pick up my son, and he told me if I have to leave, to not bother coming back. I tried my wife again and still nothing. I waited an hour until daycare called me again and told me I needed to come get our son. So I left work and got a phone call later that day that I'm fired. My wife finally called after I got home with her son. She apologized for not getting back to me sooner and gave excuses about patience. I told her that I don't want to hear it and she doesn't need to make more excuses because I got fired, so now I can just stay home with our son anyway. She wanted to know more, but I told her I didn't want to talk about it. After we got our son to bed, she asked if I wanted to talk about it, and I told her that her dedication to her job and her patience cost me my job. I told her that she never once made arrangements to pick up our son, and now we're a one-income family. She told me it isn't her fault, and I'm being a jerk for blaming her.
Okay.
I mean, ultimately, the problem starts around the employer, although I've got to say, having to leave 7 to 8 times in 2 months
is a lot.
That's a lot. Knowing that there's 2 parents, granted, one is a pediatrician, and that's not really a job conducive to, oh, sorry, have to leave. That's kind of a tough sell to patients.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, that throws a lot of wrenches into things. Like, you leave once or twice, okay, that happens, that's a problem, but okay. If she had been bearing the brunt of the full 7 to 8, I think the situation would be the same. They would still be a one-income family. It would just be, but it's on the other foot. I want to know what is your support now?
Right.
Like, y'all are the only 2 contacts for this kid. Like, there's no one else. Like, you don't have a friend, you don't have a bestie, you don't have someone else.
Right.
Though I still think that's kind of a minor part of it. But this is definitely one of those role reversal moments in trying to think it through. Because so many women end up suffering the mom tax, which is what this falls under. This is generally a mom tax on careers around, child care preempting work, usually with a husband who is aloof and unresponsive. That the school calls mom first. School doesn't even try to call dad, or if they do try to call dad, they make minimal effort to call dad. Knowing that mom will always answer. Mom will always be able to answer the question. Mom will always pick up the kid. Yeah, and Shannon's right there with me. Basically.
I don't think he's wrong for blaming her.
I don't think he is. I think it's kind of part of the situation is that's kind of true. Like, long and short of it, and that generally this happens to women with 0 acknowledgement.
Right.
They lose their jobs. They have to take lesser jobs. They get moved through a career at the whim of, like, childcare responsibilities. And it's shitty. Like, let's just all agree. It's shitty.
Right. But I think at the field that he's in, this now gives him the ability to build a job that he can be a full-time dad and a marketer.
Potential.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think this is moving towards, understanding if your employer gets it or not.
Right.
Like, a lot of companies talk about flexibility. A lot of companies talk about, understanding, and we're a family, and
Right.
all the things. What they often do is the same kind of, because literally how much of this is you're frustrated with your employee
Right.
for having to leave work in the middle of the day multiple times over a 2-month span because of a child care issue.
Right.
And how much of this was that employer thinking, you're a dude.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to have to deal with this shit.
Exactly.
Like, can't your wife take care of it?
Right.
Which is very, like, what? But the reality is there, I mean, again, that's a lot of times to leave. Like, that's literally once a week.
Right.
In a 2-month period. Or basically once a week. I do have to ask, like, is there potentially more to this?
Right.
In terms of, like, how long has OP been at their job?
Right.
Because I would think that for most employers, that if you've been there for several years and you haven't had a lot of, like, I've called out for this and I've called out for that, called out for this other thing, you know what I mean? That, like, yeah, this is one of those, give more than you take moments.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, yep, he's taking a lot of time right now, but there are a lot of other times in which he was there for us.
Right.
So let's give him that, knowing that he will return it.
Right.
Or has already prepaid it. Either which way you want to slice it. That sometimes you can have a model employee that just, like, they're always there, they always pre-schedule, they're always on top of it, and then they go through a thing.
Right.
And it sucks. It sucks for everyone, but in the long run, it's not a career end. It's like, it's not that big a deal. You go through that. We all move along together. It'll be okay.
Right.
But I ultimately have to say, not the asshole.
Yeah. I have to say that also.
I think your wife is seriously resisting, like, the blame aspect, which we're all wanting to do.
Right.
But the fact remains, like, you were in a seriously effed position.
Right.
And you just needed her to pick up.
Right.
It may have only bought you another week until this happened again.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, I think your employer was shitty.
Right.
But that's not the question in front of me. I still have to say that in this situation, that there's a certain amount of everyone's shitty here. I think you needed a better childcare plan.
Right.
That hopefully involved more people, preferably at least one of whom could always be available.
Right.
As in someone who has a very lax schedule.
Right.
But that's getting harder and harder to find. And this is also back to the employer, is that we're not living in this pretty little 1950s world with a bunch of stay-at-home housewives.
Right.
That are just sitting at home all day with, quote unquote, nothing else better to do.
Right.
Which, granted, that was never true, but in terms of employment, being a stay-at-home housewife, while some things don't get handled, it does open up the opportunity to handle other things.
It does. So we have some comments here. And of course, the poll is up.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Shannon starts off with, well, let's see. Let me. So wife knows what she was doing. They needed a third party, even if they had to pay them, that could pick the child up. Shannon says, normally it's the wives that are threatened with losing their jobs or getting fired because the husband won't go get the kid. They should have had a better plan in place because kids get sick, have bad days, etc. He can work from home now. It's not a one or the other situation. Plenty of moms do the housework and do work from home things, or peer-to-peer sales, etc. There's times I've had to leave work and I was upfront with work before they hired me. And I made sure I had doctor's notes for everything to cover my ass. See, this is that weirdo problem, though, is the kid's not sick. You can't take him to a doctor and just get a doctor's note because he's being a jerk. And I mean, 4-year-olds can be jerks. He'll grow out of it. Right. But right now, the real issue is the 4-year-old's being a jerk. Mm-hmm. And it did ultimately result in dad lost his job. But that's not really to blame the 4-year-old for, because 4-year-olds go through things. Okay.
Right.
And it's ultimately not his fault. It's the environment in which he's having 4-year-old issues.
Right.
So yeah. Brenda says they definitely need to get the child to a therapist. Sounds like husband and wife may have issues. They've turned this into a control or power issue with who is taking care of the child.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He might not have been performing well across the board for them to not work with him or give him other options. Talking about OP. You can have behavioral issues. You're a 4-year-old. There's going to be issues, whether they're behavioral, health, whatever. Something's always going to happen. And it's not always that it's the 4-year-old's fault.
Right.
In this situation, it's the 4-year-old's being a jerk. Yeah, they do that.
Right.
Ultimately, yeah, they do that. You kind of have to parent your way out of that, and, getting in touch with the therapist for the kid can help you through that faster. The benefits of having an income,
right,
or a very nice, tax bracket.
Right.
Because there are a lot of parents that just have to deal with their 4-year-old jerk. And usually that doesn't go as well as one.
No.
It also doesn't need to become the 4-year-old's fault. They don't need to make the connection that I act badly at school and I am ultimately responsible for dad losing his job. That's no, don't wait the 4-year-old with that. They don't, no. I'm not saying it won't potentially fix the problem, but it's not going to fix the problem in a good way.
Right.
You may guilt this child into never does anything wrong again. But it's gonna have costs. It's gonna have deep costs.
Yeah. I have opinions.
Okay.
My opinion is that 4-year-old needs a good ass busting.
To some degree, this kind of sounds like, 4-year-old boys being 4-year-old boys to an extent is in the sense that they are playing off of each other, and that one does something, the other one ups it, the next one ups it, and the cycle just keeps going until daycare's we can't even with this.
Right.
A little giggling interruptions and making jerky comments and making some little kid cry, and we're equipped to deal with that. But once you start throwing food and hitting and shoving and you know what I mean, it gets to a point that no, no.
Right.
But I mean, it sounds like 4-year-old probably found his like best friends.
Right. Well, up until today, because he will never be seeing them again.
Potentially, yes.
Yes.
I don't know that that's entirely true. I think this is probably a situation that's one answer. Is to either find a different daycare so dad can go back and, look for a new job. And hopefully this kid does not find his new best friends and repeat the pattern. Or potentially dad's now work from home.
Right.
Like, not stay at home, but work it.
Right.
But I don't think you're being a jerk for blaming her. That's the part I struggle with. Because I don't think you're so much blaming her as going, would you please take responsibility in this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I needed you to parent up.
Right.
Like, mom up, dad up, whatever, whatever the parent may be. I needed you to parent up. I needed you to be available. I needed you to take responsibility and take care of our child. Not every single time.
Right.
But today I needed that.
Right.
Like, that's what I needed. That's what my career needed. That's what my boss needed. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, that's what our son needed.
Right.
So, no, never place the blame on the child in front of them. Again, you can. I'm just saying, dirty parent, tactics that have worked. You can do that. You're not going to like the future bill for that at all.
Right.
Like, you don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. It'll work. You won't like how it works.
Right. All right. So let's move over to relationship advice.
All right. So we got that poll up.
Poll is up.
Yay. All right. Relationships. My boyfriend's comment upset me. Too long, didn't read. My boyfriend told me we were not in a hurry to see each other when we had potential plans. My boyfriend, 28 male, and I, 26 female, work very opposite schedules. I work 7 to 3, and he usually works 11 to 8, sometimes 9:30, depending upon when he finishes. He works for Amazon, so whenever he finishes delivering packages, he can leave. I am a CNA. We both work physical jobs. I'm off tomorrow, and since he goes in late, we spoke about seeing each other tonight, and I would drive to him if it wasn't too late and order food and sleep. Nothing crazy. He told me before that he's so tired and hungry, and if he takes his break today, he might finish around 10:30. He lives about a half hour away, so I don't want to drive a half hour and arrive at 11 p.m. I asked him if he will probably finish around 10:30, and he said yes. I said, okay. He said, we are not in a hurry. This comment hurt me because he's right. We aren't in a hurry, but I wish he was more enthusiastic about seeing me. We spend Wednesday and Thursday together for my birthday at the beach and going out to dinner, and he bought me an Apple Watch and flowers, and then Saturday we got dinner and had a nice night together. It's not like he's always like this, but his comment upset me a little. English is also his second language.
All right.
What?
Yeah.
What are you upset about? Like, I'm just somehow not I'm not seeing the struggle. We're not in a hurry.
Right. Meaning, don't rush. What he meant to say is don't rush. I don't know if I'm getting off at 10:30 or 11, and all she took was don't hurry.
I mean, any which way you slice it, I don't see the, like, I've heard some backhanded comments from boyfriends over the years. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm struggling to see, like, where's the upset in this? Is that, like, look, I'm trying to get out by 10:30. It could be 11. It's been a long day. Like that's the perspective I'm taking this from.
Mm-hmm.
Why is an OP? Like, how enthusiastic do you want? One, how enthusiastic do you want someone who's exhausted to be?
Right.
Like, point blank. Like, you have a more fixed job. Granted, your day can go anywhere and everywhere as a CNA.
Right.
I get that. 11 to 8 is probably a pipe dream. Like, that's the nice thing they put on, their work schedules.
Right.
The reality.
The reality is, I think she's being oversensitive to this comment because she isn't getting great movement with him for the situation that they're in, that they live opposite schedules. When it's not really opposite schedules, she just gets 5 to 6 hours herself and gets overstressed out.
Yeah. I mean, Brenda's going, maybe she wanted him to seem more excited to see her. I'm not, I get that. It's just, I really struggle with, for either of them,
Mm-hmm.
one way or the other, back and forth amongst themselves, how much energy could y'all possibly be expected to have?
Right.
Like 8 hours as a CNA, I don't know that I want to see a CNA after 8 hours or 12 or 16.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing left. Like, you like, no matter how many hours you work as a CNA, I will about guarantee that after your shift, there is nothing left.
Right. But, at 3:30, it's normally like, leave me alone. But she's already had a nap, recharged, ready to go see him. And she's expecting him to be bouncing off the walls. And, she doesn't see the "we're not in a hurry" comment as, I can't wait to see you tonight. It's more like, you can get here at 11:15. You're 11, you can get here at 11:40.
Yeah, well, fundamentally, it's kind of like, what's your problem, bitch? Is sort of the sound she's hearing.
Right.
Which I'm sure to some degree that might be a little bit of what the sound is.
Right.
Again, from someone who went into work at 11 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
and is potentially getting off not at 8, not at 9:30, but 10:30, possibly 11 or later.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really?
Right.
Amazon delivery. Like, this is one of the worst, like, delivery period is already bad. And is as if you could make it worse, and Amazon found a way. Like, y'all, we have Amazon drivers that are just dropping dead.
Right.
Like, those trucks are flipping hot.
Right.
Like, the routes are insane. The people on the routes are insane.
Right.
Like, this, like, it's not just a very physical job. It's an overly physical job.
Right.
And then you're hoping he skipped his break so he could get faster. I mean, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, Brenda's at 12-hour shift. You're going to be lucky that I want to see you. Yeah. Like, I think that's a fair moment of, like, I'm dead now.
Right.
Like,
and I think that, and looking at the amount of time they've spent together, 3 days already in this week.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't he miss me? You've not given him time to miss you. We've seen each other as much as they've seen each other.
Pretty much.
Okay?
What?
So sorry, I have no sympathy. I think you need to take a damn chill pill. My advice is relax. Realize that you can sleep in tomorrow.
Yeah, I think this is one of those, like, work out what your problem is. Because it's your problem with the comment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think most of us are seeing the problem that is the comment.
Right.
We're seeing you have a problem with it. I think you need to work out amongst yourself what that is.
Right.
So, yeah. All right. Shannon says, nah, my hubby was like that when we first started dating, and I had to be like, look, I got a life outside of you. Calm down. I will make time for you when I have energy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 Like, there's a limit. There is a limit.
Thin margin of limit here. All right, let's see what that poll is.
And survey says...
Come on, here we go. Ooh, everyone's shitty with vinegar. 50% everyone's shitty, and you're in a dill pickle.
Yeah. That's
it's kerosene pickles. You know, it's Aunt Bee's dill pickles.
Yeah. I'm just, yeah. But I still don't think you can outright call OP the asshole. I think it's a fair comment.
I think he's the asshole for not seeing the pattern and going, I'm going to fix this. Putting on his husband hat and hello, care.com. I need an on-call nanny maybe 3 to 5 times a week. Click, honey, I've hired a nanny. You're paying for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, in 2 months, you're not really, you're expecting there's got to be a light at the end of this tunnel.
Right.
They're like, okay, I've picked up the kid once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, because I'm just going to assume it's once a week for the last 2 months. So 8 times, all of the way through, hoping that, you know, or taking the excuse that, well, I was busy with patients and I was in a complicated exam and I was, you know, in a staff meeting and, you know, like, I'm sure you've heard them all. Or, yeah, honey, I'm turning off my phone this week. It's your turn. So if you're unavailable, again, though, turning off our phones isn't always viable. I think both are in careers where it's probably a very bad idea.
Right.
But the fact that you can't even acknowledge, because fundamentally that's where my I don't think you're the asshole kind of comes in, is that, like, you couldn't even acknowledge.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you're not even like attempting to respond.
Right.
Until hours later, when you know he's already got the kid. You have to know by this point.
Right. And you know, I'm looking at it and going, you know, the two of them with these jobs and these incomes can hire a part-time nanny. They should already have one that also, like, I don't know, does a little housekeeping, makes a few lunches, dinners for them.
And I think this is one of those moments where you really have to, when we talk about, like, planning for childcare, it really does have to be a plan in which you work through the obvious options.
Right.
You know, look, we're sending this kid to daycare. If I can't pick him up, you can pick him up. You still have to go, okay, but what if neither of us can pick him up? Like, you're in marketing, I'm in the medical world. That's not always going to work out, is it?
No.
Like, be realistic. Like, is that going to work? Like, if it sounds so stupid. But you almost have to take it from a perspective of, before you have this kid,
Mm-hmm.
before you enroll this kid in childcare or in daycare, you really have to treat it, the situation at least, like, what if one of you had to be there for a cable hookup?
Right.
What if someone has to be physically present for a cable hookup?
Mm-hmm.
And it's spontaneous. It's not pre-planned. You don't have time.
Right.
You don't get 2 weeks notice. It's like today.
Right.
What's the likelihood that either one or both of you could drop everything
Mm-hmm.
and leave for that?
Right.
Like, start there and think it through. Like, you're going to quickly realize we need someone else.
Right.
Like, you know, like, can we farm this out? Do we have, like, you know, someone, a brother, a sister, a cousin,
Mm-hmm.
a neighbor
Mm-hmm.
that we trust enough to be like, look, here's our keys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we need, like, someone to pick up a package, or, you know, to wait for the cable guy, or we have a repairman coming on Wednesday, I think a warm body available. Like,
Yeah.
you do not have to be the most gifted childcare professional ever. You don't have to be the most gifted, you know, person in the world. I need a warm body that is semi-responsible.
Right.
Like, don't blow the house up. Don't kill the kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, everything else is negotiable.
Right. But I think when they saw the issue, they should have took action. Getting it to the behavioral therapist level is like, okay, maybe he needs a different environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but still, though, that's it. It's no matter what you do going forward, you've got to resolve the what if scenarios.
Exactly. And who's the parent here?
Yeah. Brenda brings up goddaughter works in daycare. Parents will say okay when called to come pick up their kids, but show up at the regular time. Something tells me this daycare has some policies for that.
Well, something tells me they're afraid that this daycare is going to report them to a welfare system.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So with that, guys, let's go ahead and we will be back Friday at 9 p.m. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's show. And, you know, I hope things went well. I really like talking with Penelope. It's not often we get a fictional writer, especially metaphysical fiction. Like, it's so hard to get.
Oh, absolutely. Well, of course, we want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Brenda, Joan Owen, Shannon C, Shannon D, Lady Gwendolyn, Caitlin Bell, Devin, and Maria Meyer. If you'd like to learn more about us, the show, or how you too can become a Patreon sponsor and receive all the wonderful benefits our baristas receive, please visit us at pcspnetwork.com.
Yes. And you guys have a great evening.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.